Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just reading a text, we are actually conducting a logical autopsy. We're going to dive into a perfectly concise 7-step philosophical argument and really put its internal logic under the microscope. We have a source text here that claims to prove a massive, universal concept using absolutely nothing but 7 meticulously crafted sentences. It's fascinating, it's highly structured, and it honestly demands our full attention. Because look, if this holds up, it solves arguably the greatest mystery of human existence. But if it doesn't, well, then it's a masterclass in logical sleight of hand. So grab your mental scalpels because we are going to dissect this argument piece by piece to see exactly how its gears turn. So to kick things off, we really have to ask the ultimate question that this whole text poses. Can we logically prove the universe's aim using literally just 7 brief statements? The author of our source materials certainly thinks so. This isn't some sprawling essay or an emotional appeal. It is a rigid, mathematical-style proof applied directly to metaphysics. Historically, philosophers have loved attempting this, taking wildly abstract concepts like the divine, the infinite, and the purpose of existence, and forcing them into strict algebraic formulas. It is an incredibly ambitious way to argue for sure, but as with any bold claim, the validity of the destination completely depends on the reliability of the vehicle taking us there. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the 7-step syllogism, which is the complete argument. Okay, here is the source material in its entirety. It's a classic logical syllogism that attempts to meticulously connect a starting point to a massive conclusion. Just look at how it reads. It's almost like a computer program, moving inevitably from one line of code to the exact next one. We start at point 1, God is perfect. We move to point 2, perfect beings always make the best possible choice in every situation. Point 3 sets up an action. God chose the aim of the universe. Then point 4 gives us our very first major deduction. Therefore, God chose the best possible aim. Just take a second to digest that. Then point 5 introduces a new concept into the mix. The best possible aim aims at what is best. Point 6 defines that specific target. God is what's best. And finally, point 7 delivers the payload, the grand finale of this logical sequence. Therefore, the universe aims at God. On the surface, it looks incredibly tight, a beautifully constructed mechanism. Moving on to section 2, analyzing the base premises, building the foundation. Now, to truly critique this argument, we have to look at how the author builds their foundation using some very specific assumptions. They start by establishing 2 foundational statements, God's inherent perfection and the act of choosing the universe's aim. Notice that points 1 and 3 are stated as absolute, indisputable facts within the framework of this argument. There is no debate offered here whatsoever. These are just the given variables. God exists, God is perfect, and God actively made a choice regarding the trajectory of the universe. I mean, think about the sheer audacity of asking a reader to just accept point 1 as a baseline given. Philosophers have spent thousands of years crafting complex ontological and cosmological arguments just trying to prove what this author casually assumes in exactly 3 words. If you don't accept these starting lines without question, the rest of the text literally cannot even begin to function. But the really crucial point here is how the text strictly defines perfection. It isn't treated as some abstract, transcendent concept, but rather as an action, always making the absolute best choice in any given scenario. This is point number 2 in our source. The author doesn't leave perfection up to our imagination at all. They completely box it in. Perfection equals making the optimal choice. This operational definition is the engine that drives the whole logic forward, but it is also a massive philosophical trap. By defining perfection this way, the argument essentially anthropomorphizes a supreme being. Instead of an infinite, limitless state of being, the creator is suddenly framed as a cosmic optimizer, like an algorithmic manager running through a literal checklist of options.
All right, section 3, the first deduction, the first therefore.
Notice how the conclusion here is mathematically derived just by blending our 3 specific ingredients together. We take the assumption that God is perfect, combine it with the newly established rule that perfection means making the best choice, and apply that rule to the act of choosing the universe's aim. When you blend those 3 independent thoughts together, they inevitably synthesize to give us point 4. Therefore, God chose the best possible aim. It is logically airtight, but, only if you assume the ingredients we just mixed are completely flawless and universally true. So let's apply a little critical pressure right here. Does point 4 truly earn its therefore? Or does this whole join just completely collapse if we question that struct definition of perfection we just analyzed? I mean, think about this. What is the best possible choice when a painter approaches a blank canvas? Is it the brushstroke that creates the most realistic image? The most abstract? The most universally loved? The entire concept of a best choice is inherently subjective, deeply dependent on the specific goal you're trying to achieve. Applying this subjective human framework of optimization to a grand cosmic scale is a major logical flaw. If a perfect being operates totally outside human concepts of efficiency and optimization, well, this deduction suddenly becomes quite wobbly. However, strictly within the confined rules the author has set up for us, the internal logic does function. Which brings us to Section 4, aiming at what is best, introducing new variables. All right, so having established that the aim chosen was the best possible, the text now introduces a second set of foundational premises to bridge the concept of choice with the ultimate target. Point 5 asserts that a best possible aim inherently points toward whatever the best thing is. It's almost a tautology, right? It just repeats itself to establish a rule. Then, point 6 drops this massive, completely newly introduced axiom: God is what's best. The author just handed us a master key here, equating the ultimate target directly with the creator they introduced back in step 1. And that leads us to Section 5, the final conclusion, the ultimate deduction. This final, massive conclusion carries the weight of the entire argument, relying entirely on the structural integrity of every single premise stacked beneath it. Point 7. Therefore, the universe aims at God. Let's trace that closed, perfect loop of logic. Because the creator chose the best aim, and because we accepted the rule that the best aim points to what is best, and because we accepted the sudden definition that the creator is what is best, the universe must inevitably, by the rules of this specific mathematical formula, be aiming right back at the creator. The author has effectively engineered a scenario where absolutely no other outcome is mathematically possible based solely on their own previous definitions. Finally, Section 6, critiquing the structure, a house of cards? By separating the base assumptions from the deduced therefores, the pure mechanical nature of the syllogism becomes super clear. The conclusions, points 4 and 7, are completely powerless on their own. They are entirely beholden to the subjective assumptions made in the foundational points. And this is the beauty and honestly the ultimate danger of formal logic. It acts merely as a processor. It just processes whatever raw data you feed into it, completely blind to whether that data actually reflects reality. Our critique reveals a brilliant, but frankly incredibly fragile structure. It acts like a giant house of cards, where moving or even just questioning a single premise instantly topples the final conclusion. Let's zero in on point 6 for a second. God is what's best. This is an incredibly subjective statement that is completely disguised as an objective universal variable. This is exactly how many grand philosophical proofs operate. They hide their weakest arguments right in plain sight by phrasing them as absolute truths. If a critic steps in and says, wait a minute, what if what's best is actually maximum universal harmony, or maybe infinite biological diversity rather than a single entity, well, the entire thing crumbles. If point 6 falls, point 7 is immediately obliterated. The entire universe's aim gets completely redirected the second you tweak one single word in the premises. So we have to leave you with this structural question to ponder. Does this beautifully engineered argument genuinely prove its point? Or were the premises just reverse engineered from the start to guarantee this exact final destination? It's a classic logical fallacy known as begging the question. Did the author already know they wanted to conclude that the universe aims at God and therefore intentionally crafted the definitions of perfection and what is best specifically to force that outcome? The syllogism works flawlessly as a machine for sure, but as we've seen today, the truth of a machine's output is entirely bound by the purity of its raw materials. What do you think? Did the 7-step autopsy reveal a profound universal truth or just a really, really clever word puzzle? Let that sit with you. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the foundations.